and welcome to Challenge 7, the Trial of Promotions. We're getting to the home stretch here. This is the game before the final trial, which is the game that was based off of Taikyoku Shogi, the largest chess-adjacent game in existence as far as pieces goes. Mine is technically slightly smaller because I don't fill the entire board, but it's definitely made up for in the fact that it is more complicated. Nonetheless, we're not talking about the final trial today. Today we'll be talking about the trial of promotions. And now, I'm going to be honest, I got a little burned out when making these games, which is why I took a little bit of a break from making these episodes. But now that I'm back, we're going to switch up the way that I explain this game just a tad bit. Especially with these next few games, there is a tremendously high amount of pieces that are new in every game now. And it would take, I mean, editing the video not only would take a while, but also the video itself would probably be like an hour and a half to 2 hours long for this one. And I can't even imagine how long the final trial is going to be. But I don't want to do that to you guys because that's a long video and most of it's recap. So I'm skipping the recap, but instead I'm going to show you this little tutorial explaining how all the moves work again, just a quick example, and hopefully from any of that you can understand how the pieces work. So first movement type we'll explain is the step move. This allows the piece to take a single step in the direction that the movement is placed on the piece. So this example piece can go here, here, or here. Next up, we have limit range. This allows the piece to move up to a certain amount of spaces in a direction. So for this example, the 2 limit range would allow the piece to move up to 2 spaces in any of the direction that the limit range is on. The 3 limit range would allow the piece to go 1 space further. The 4 limit range would allow the piece to go 1 space further in any of these directions. 5, 1 space further, and finally 6, also 1 space further. Next up is this line, which refers to ranging. This means the piece can move as many spaces in this direction as long as it's unobscured, just like all the other movement types so far. Next up, we have the Tier 1 cannon moves. Now, obviously, the Tier 1 cannon moves are facing in this direction, and this direction. But the legal moves for this piece in this position are here, here, and here. Because the Tier 1 cannon move must jump over a piece before moving. It can be a friendly piece or an enemy piece, but it must jump over the piece before it can move. And it must also do this when capturing. Next up, we have Tier 2 cannon moves, which can move normally in the direction that they would be going to, but in order to capture, they must jump over a piece first, and then afterwards they can land on a piece to capture it, meaning that these would be the legal moves available to this example piece. Tier 3 cannon moves are the strongest. This allows you to move normally as a ranging piece, but when making a capture, you can hop over as many pieces as you would like and land on a piece to capture. This ability to capture over as many pieces as you would like is not able to be used against royal pieces and pieces with the inspire aspect. Up next, we have hook range. Now, a hook range piece is allowed to move like a normal ranger in the directions that it's facing in. So as example, it could take this pawn or it can move these directions. But optionally, while it's moving in those directions, it is allowed to make a hook maneuver where it stops on one of the moves that it's making. So for example, in this direction, it can move this way, stop here, and then move this direction as a normal ranging piece again. This does not allow the piece to capture multiple pieces per movement. You can still only capture once. So once you take this pawn, you'd have to stop. You would not be able to hook afterwards. That's not allowed. But what this does allow is for you to make some very interesting maneuverability that many other pieces do not have access to. For example, you can go like this and then hook on to grab this pawn. But if you wanted to get this pawn, you do not have a hook range this direction, you can still go like this to get to it. So as you can see, hook range is actually very useful. Next up, we have cannon hook moves. Now, hook moves, it works exactly the same as the hook mover worked before, where you can make 2 moves with it as long as you're not only capturing 1 piece still, but it has the same requirement for capturing as a level 2 cannon moves. So for example, you could move like this, hop over this piece, and capture this one. Next up we have the freeze range or net range. Now this is a very special piece because the basic premise is that it is still just a ranging piece. It still moves in the exact same manners for ranging pieces, but importantly, pieces that are in that range are not allowed to move. They are frozen in place. Even though this pawn has a step move that could capture this example piece, it's unable to because it's frozen in place by this net range. And that would go for any piece along these diagonals as well. For example, if this pawn was right here, it would also be unable to move. Next up we have burning range. Now this is one of the strongest ranging varieties. This piece can move normally as a range piece, or it can make a special burning range maneuver where it jumps over as many pieces as it would like to as long as it lands on an empty space afterwards. So for example, it could move to this space, but in doing so, it burns, aka destroys or captures every single piece that it flew over in the process. So every single one of these spaces would be burned, so both these pawns would be captured, and then it would land here. Up next we have jump. This is a very simple one. You jump over one space and land on the space afterwards. This allows you to jump over pieces. So for example, you can jump using this one, you can jump over this pawn and land on this one, capturing it. You could also land here. Another variety of jump is this, for example, which allows you to jump in this L-like shape, very much like a knight from regular chess. Next up is big jump. This just means you can jump over 2 spaces instead of 1. So it would jump to here, or to here. Again, jumping over the pawns and landing on this one. Next up we have step or jump. Very simple. You may take a step move in any of the directions that you have this, or a jump move in any of these directions you have it. Notably, you are still jumping for your other maneuver, meaning that you can get over this pawn. It is different from limited range 2 because you can jump over when you're going 2 spaces. Next up we have jump 2-step. Now this basically means that you can jump in any of these directions, but then after you make the jump, you can take 1 step also. So basically the range would look like this. Jumping and then taking the step, allowing you to capture this pawn. Again, this maneuver does not allow you to capture multiple pieces. It is still just one maneuver. So if there was a pawn here, you would not be able to take the step to also grab this pawn. It would be stopped here. Next up is jump to limit range. This is a limit range of 2. There's no pieces that have more than a limit range of 2, but same premise here. You can make a jump and then afterwards take a limit range of 2 spaces. So the range would look something like this. Again, the limit range would be stopped at this pawn. You cannot capture multiple pieces with this maneuver, but a jump and then a limit range of up to 2 spaces afterwards. Jump to range. This allows you to make a jump and then after finishing the jump, range as far as you can go. Again, only allowing you to capture 1 piece with the maneuver, meaning that this pawn would block you from ranging further, but this one would not because you're jumping over it with your initial jump and then ranging. Big jump to range. Very simple, just like the last one. You jump over 2 spaces and then range after that. This one would still get stopped as it is a piece in the way, but these 2 could range continuously onward. Next up we have continued jump. This allows you to jump as if you were ranging with those jumps specifically. So for this example piece, you could go here, and then afterwards you could jump to here, and keep going until you either ran into a wall or a piece. So for example, this wall would stop the movement here. In forward, same thing. And over here, you jump over this space, and then you would also jump over this space, meaning you could continue down the board in this direction. And another example of this continued jump range is in this example piece, which is showing the horse variety, or the knight variety from regular chess. And as you can see, this would allow it to capture this pawn because it jumps this way, and then its second jump goes to here, which picks up the pawn. Notably, you do not change directions during this maneuver, so you would keep going in this manner. And I'll put up an example of some of these jump rangers so that it's easier to see what is going on. Next up, we're going to show off the multi-movers. And the first up is the simple Igui Eat move. This simply allows you to move onto one of these spaces and then immediately move back. So in this example piece, this piece would never actually leave this space right here, but it could capture any pieces in these spaces and then move back to where it started before ending its turn. Next up, we have the railed double move. This simply allows you to move 2 spaces in these directions, but notably, you are allowed to capture multiple pieces with this maneuver. So the first part of this maneuver would move you here, allowing you to capture this pawn, and then the second part could allow you to go here to capture the other pawn. Specifically, railed pieces, although, are not allowed to mix and match with other railed pieces. So if you start multi-moving in this direction with a railed multi-move, you have to stay on this course the whole time. Same for these directions. Notably, with multi-movers, if your first move lands you on top of a friendly piece, but your second move moves you off of that friendly piece, you do not capture your own friendly piece. Obviously, you're not allowed to capture your friendly pieces anyway, but you are allowed to do this, where you keep your friendly piece alive by jumping over it with your first move of a multi-move. Next up is the triple railed multi-move, which simply allows you to do the exact same thing as last time, but move 3 times in this scenario. Now, notably, when you're having multi-moves, it does allow you to simply move one space, capture the piece, and move back, and forego your third move for this piece. In the last piece's example, you could do that, but you wouldn't be foregoing any moves because you only have 2. This piece, very specially, because it has 3 multi-moves, is allowed to perhaps take, and then use its third move to go back to this space, or take, move back, and stay put. Or it could go the full distance, or it can move one space just like normal. You are always allowed to forego some of your multi-moves when you're multi-moving. Next up, we have the double multi-move normal edition. Now, what makes these much stronger than the other versions is their versatility, because they can be mixed and matched with. So for example, this piece right here can reach any of these spaces, because it can take its first move in this direction and then go this way, or this way, or this way afterwards. Basically, you're making these step moves, but twice. So it could step move this way and then this way to capture this pawn, or it could step move this way to capture this pawn, and then step move this way to capture nothing, but move to that space, or it could simply Igui Eat and then move right back to where it started. And the exact same premise over here, but 3 times instead of twice, which makes pieces that have this maneuvering ability very powerful as far as space control is concerned, as it reaches all of these spaces, and it can always jump over friendly pieces, and it's allowed to capture multiple pieces per turn, which means you could very easily 1, 2, and then move here, or here, or here, or go back. So Igui Eat, go back. Remember, you're allowed to go back as long as you came from that direction originally. So for example, if this piece went here and then here, it could go back here, but it would not be allowed to go back this direction because it didn't come from that direction. The going back for an Igui does not allow for doing something in that manner unless you have the extra moves for it. We have the multi-jump movers. Now these, just like normal, are jump movers, so they move in these directions. But then after making their first move, they can make a second move, also in those directions, allowing you to get much more usability out of these pieces. So for example, this piece could jump here and then jump here, or jump here and then jump here, capturing the piece. Or jump here, capture this piece, and then jump here afterwards to capture this piece. And of course, just like always, you can capture and then move right back as an Igui Eat move. And just like the other jump moves, there is also a horse variety of these jump moves, which allows you to move in this manner. And then, of course, the extra version in these directions. Again, that's a horse move this way and then a horse move this way. Or you could capture this piece and then move here. Or again, Igui Eat and go back. Now for the arguably strongest move type in the game, definitely the strongest of the multi-moving move types, is the 5 times multi-move. This allows you to move in any of the directions that you have this symbol in up to 5 times. So as you can see, this piece can simply move, move, capture, move, move, capture. And that ends its movement, as this was 1, 2, 3, 4, still has one move left, 5 to any of those three, or perhaps you go back. Again, that could be 1, 2, 3, 4, end your movement, capturing a piece 2 spaces away from you, going right back to where you started. Or you could simply take a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 just to get to a random space. Again, all of those moves can jump over friendly pieces if necessary. This is the double limit range multi-move. It's a little bit complicated, but it is understandable. As you can see, you can, as a limit ranger would do, move in any of these directions, stopping your first move after one of these spaces, and then after you get done with that, you may do it again. Next up, we have the railed range pieces. Now, these are very simple. You're allowed to make these railed moves, capturing multiple pieces, or you can make a ranged move that goes all the way in any of the directions that the range faces. It's basically just a ranged plus the double moves. You can do either or. You do not combine them. You can do either or. Same for this. This is a triple railed multi-move, up to 3 spaces in any of the directions it's facing, or a ranged move in that direction. And again, this does not mean you combine them. This is simply one or the other. Just like the railed varieties, this is simply the same thing, but for the regular double moves instead of the railed variety. And exactly the same thing, but for triple moves, this works in the exact same manner as the other. Now that that's out of the way, I'm going to give a quick overview of all the new pieces and what pieces they promote to. I'm just going to scan them on the starting lineup, and I will flash in the corner of the screen the piece and what it promotes to, and you guys can look at the movements and figure out how it moves. But the important pieces, and especially all the new aspects, I will be going into detail of. So as we scan the starting lineup, as you can see, the first row forward has a few forward pieces more than normal. We've got a pawn in front of your donkey, go-betweens, dogs, and more go-betweens, more dog, and yet another pawn in front of this donkey. The next row down is your simple pawn row, but we have some howling dogs in here as well, which are new to this piece, of course. Very simple promotion, as you can see, to this piece. The next line down, we've got some left chariots, side movers, vertical movers, tile cannons, copper cannons, silver cannons, gold cannons. As you can see, all of the cannons are actually featured in this game. You can see these over here are the stronger versions, but then you also have your iron cannon down here and your stone cannon over here. And of course, that is the same on the other side. But continuing across this direction, you've got your soaring eagle, horned falcon, just like normal, princess, hook mover, and a few new ones. You see the Tengu is over here opposite the hook mover, but we've got a peeled blister, a wild gun, and a northern barbarian. And I will be talking about these pieces in more detail later. The wild gun and peeled blisters, as you can see, they have a new aspect. But the northern barbarian, western barbarian, eastern barbarian, and southern barbarian are all new pieces. They have very simple movement statistics here, and they surround an enchanted badger. And right here, I'll put on screen the promotions and pieces for their movement varieties. They're pretty simple pieces and their promotions are decently strong, but it is very unlikely that you'll actually be able to use these for anything other than a supporting piece in a push or center space holders. The next row down, we're going to continue is this manner. We got Mighty Boar and Flying Oxen, just like last game. We've got a new piece here, the Woodland Demon. Now this piece also has a new aspect, so I will be going into more detail on this piece in a minute. But first, let's move on to the Painted Elephant, another new piece. This one has good retreating potential, but overall isn't necessarily the most powerful piece, and it's unlikely that you'll promote it, so its promotion doesn't matter too much. The Square Mover, on the other hand, is a great bonus piece to be adding. It's somewhere power-wise between the Dragon Knight and the Rook, and since it starts right next to the two of them, it can be great in an attack if you can open up a file. Over here we've got the Jade Cannon, another piece that does not promote. Golden Bird, and then we get back to our center diamond with the Enchanted Badger in the middle, and the Vermilion Sparrow. This piece's promotion has a very powerful movement variety, which I did explain in the movement tutorial section that I just played. If you are still wondering how this piece works exactly, it's going to have the same movement variety as the promotion of another piece that I'll be explaining in depth later, although. So you can always wait for that section. But otherwise, just note that the Vermilion Sparrow is a great piece and definitely should not be taken for granted. Do not throw this piece away. It will be useful. Next row down has your Iron Cannon and Stone Cannon, as I explained earlier, but it also has the Blue Dragon, which is opposite the Red Dragon. Now, these pieces are pretty useful for supporting an attack or holding space, but overall their promotions don't really grant them that much, and so they are low priority promoted pieces. The next over, we've got the Rushing Bird on the right, and on the left, the Turtle Snake. These also don't have very good promotions. They definitely are stronger promotions compared to the Blue and Red Dragons, but I wouldn't recommend pushing for these pieces either. They could be very useful for holding space in the middle on the Turtle Snake's account, and on the Rushing Bird's account can be good for setting up an ambush. Next up, we've got this Old Monkey, your Bishop, your Dragon Horse, and a new piece, the Great Dragon. Now, this piece is a very powerful attacking piece that should not be taken for granted. The backward hook moves are great for holding space, and the cannon moves allow you to push into the enemy territory if you find an opportunity to, allowing you to escape with the hook moves if necessary, or you can simply hold a ton of back-end space of your own. It's great for protection, and it has decent attacking properties. That is, when you promote it, it becomes the Ancient Dragon, one of the strongest hook movers in the game. A Peacock, of course, promoting to the Tengu, a very useful piece in general, and promoting it should be a pretty high priority for you. Your Painted Lion, just like last game, can come in handy alongside your Lionhawk. Another new piece joining your army is the Wooden Dove. Promoting to the Jade Dove, it has Carnage, meaning it has decent capture properties right off the rip, but most importantly, once you promote it, you can capture up to 4 pieces in one turn with this piece, which is not bad to say the least. Again, you get a Spirit Dove in this game. If you remember from Trial by Fire, it was a very powerful piece and is only returning here because the power level of the game is spiking more. Moving to the next row, we've got the Flying Cat. This is a simple piece. The Flying Cat has a decent promotion. Chariot Soldier, we'll be talking about this piece later because its promotion is very strong. You got your Flying Dragon, Cat Sword, Angry Boar, Chinese Rooster, and some new pieces over here, the Silver Hare and Golden Deer. Now, these pieces have decent movement, especially the Silver Hare is more useful for defense, and the Golden Deer is obviously an attack more centric piece. They're weaker than Bishops, both of them, especially the Silver Hare. I wouldn't recommend moving these pieces unless you need to move them out of the way, but the promotions can come in handy from a different piece that we'll be talking about later in this video as well. Skyward Net. Just like in Trial 5, the Skyward Net is very useful, given its freeze potential abilities. Old Kite, on the other side, we've got the Poisonous Snake, promoting to the Hook Mover and Tengu as shown right here. Pretty decent pieces, but moving them in to actually promote them is very difficult, although again, promotion in this game is going to have a bit of a boost from this piece in the middle here, the Vanguard. Going down another row, we've got the Racing Chariot. This is very similar to the square mover here, except its step moves are diagonally behind it instead of diagonally in front of it. A useful piece to add to your attacks, and it is in the same row as the Reverse Chariot and Lance, meaning that it can be useful for a battery off the rip. You've got your Whale underneath the Painted Horse, just like normal. And another new piece here, the Ram's Horns. It has another new aspect, but this aspect will be talked about as many pieces in this game have this aspect now. This is a very useful aspect that I'll explain more in detail later. But as you can see, its promotion is very unique and interesting. It's got a lot of potential for taking pieces, but only in a defensive manner, if you will. Another new piece is the Crippled Wheel. This piece also has a new aspect, and it is a very powerful aspect. Also will be explained more later. We've got another Rat Snake, which is of course opposite the Old Rat, but otherwise we've got the Flying Horse over here. The Flying Horse has a pretty decent promotion. Get a She-Devil over here, obviously opposite the Dove. Over here towards the middle, we've got the Itsumade and the Rock. Now these are very similar looking to the Phoenix and Kirin. As you can see, the Itsumade has big jumps and limit ranges of 2 in places of the regular jumps and step moves of the Kirin, and the Rock has big jumps and limit ranges of 2 in place of the jumps and step moves of the Phoenix. And their promotions are very strong, and we'll be talking about them in more detail in a minute. Otherwise, in the middle, you'll see the Asura Sumo Wrestler, Heavenly Protector, and Yakshini are actually replacements to the Yaksha Divine Guardian Wrestler and Rakshasa. Now, these pieces will be returning in the final game along with those pieces currently listed, but for now, you'll only have these. They have the same promotion, but their movement is much stronger. More on the movement later. But in the middle of these pieces is the Killer Whale. Now, this piece has a very powerful promotion to the Ghost Whale. Another new aspect on this piece, we'll talk more about this in a minute, but Reverse Chariot, Painted Horse, just like normal. Underneath them is the Lance and the Knight. But we've got a Treetop Tiger, and on the other side, the Snow Tiger. These pieces, very similar to the red and blue dragon variants, have very simple promotions and are useful for defense on the side and a little bit of attacking potential, but they won't be used much outside of that. Over here we've got the Violent Tortoise and Giant Salamander, and on the other side of the board here we've got the Giant Spider and Round Apple. Now, these 4 pieces all have very nice movement potentials. These are actually very decent attacking pieces with good promotions as well. Getting them promoted and using them is going to be one of your top priorities. The problem is getting them out will be quite difficult. As you can see, the Giant Spider and Round Apple have a much easier time getting out, as you can get them off this diagonal once you start moving some of these pieces. And whilst moving them, you might even be able to get your Silver Hair out. On the other hand, the Giant Apple and Violent Tortoise might have more struggles. Because of their jumping potential, although, you can use a bit of maneuverability, such as moving this Violent Ox up to get some hops going, and then move them out. But it is going to be a bit of a difficulty nonetheless. They are very strong attacking pieces, though, so I would recommend using them as much as possible. Moving on from there, we've got the Blind Tiger, and a new piece, the Fierce Eagle. On the other side of things here, Fierce Bear. Now, the Fierce Bear and Fierce Eagle both have Carnage and have very strong promotions as well. I would recommend trying to get these promoted if possible, but just getting them out might be difficult, so it might be more effective to utilize one in the attack, perhaps using your Vanguard to help get it out. More on that later. And the other one staying back as protection. As normal, you've also got your Evil Wolf, Reclining Dragon, Blind Bear, and another Evil Wolf on this side. But most importantly is a new piece, the Vertical Pup and Vertical Horse. These have decent promotions, and as you can see, one of them has the royal aspect. That's a very strong piece to get promoted if possible. And the Vertical Horse has a strong promotion as well. If possible, get this piece promoted. It only can really move forward, so getting it promoted is going to be difficult, but getting it out isn't bad. Again, your Dark Spirit and Divas join the mix, and for the first time, you start with an Emperor. This means that getting your Blind Bear turned into an Emperor is no longer the only way to get an Emperor into the game. The Emperor is, as you can probably guess, one of the strongest pieces to start with, but both of you having an Emperor causes a bit of difficulty. Again, you can't capture just anything with the Emperor, because if it gets captured right way back, you've lost your Emperor for nothing. And since the other player has an Emperor, you can't capture a piece that's no longer protected either, because the Emperor can simply capture it back, which makes strategizing a little bit more difficult in this game than you might at first think. Just be careful with your Emperor and remember that it has potential to be very strong. Finally, we go down to the last row. Again, Lance, Knight, Ferocious Leopard, Stone General, Iron General, Tile General, Copper General, Silver General, Gold General, And now we start getting to some new pieces. Let's skip past these for a second to note the king and the drunken elephant in the middle. But then the 5 new pieces, we've got the mountain general, the fire general, the water general, and the wind general. All of these have a new aspect. This aspect, of course, has been seen on other pieces, but it is also on the wind general. We'll be talking about these pieces in detail later, and as well we'll be talking about the spirit fruit, which also has a new aspect later. But that is the base board setup. As you can see on the other side, it is flipped, so not mirrored, but flipped, just like all the other games. And we'll be talking more about board preparation and how this game actually plays out after I go over some of those important pieces that I need to describe a little better. Up first, we'll be describing the Woodland Demon. As you can see, its movements are pretty simple, but the aspect we'll be dealing with here is the important thing to keep in mind. This aspect is called stun. Whenever this piece or a piece with this aspect moves, any piece that it moves adjacent to, adjacent is all of these spaces surrounding it, will become stunned and unable to move for 1 turn. So basically, this piece has a lot of potential because no pieces that are surrounding it after its movement ends can actually recapture it, meaning it can get in and get out very easily. This makes promoting the Woodland Demon actually pretty simple as long as you find an area where there's no ranged pieces that can scout it out. And of course, you don't get put in some sort of trap with, for example, the Skyward Net, which is in this game and can very easily freeze this piece, putting all of its potential out the window. Its promotion is where things get interesting. It has the same aspect as before, but it has a new movement symbol. This movement symbol is only found on the Thunder Runner, so don't worry about seeing this a ton later. Basically, what this movement symbol is a special kind of hook move where you'll hook constantly whilst moving. So as you can see, it's a ranging piece where it moves to the right and up, and then to the left and up, and then to the right and up, and then to the left and up. And it continues this all the way until a piece is in its way, or it can no longer move because there's a wall or something in the way. And this is the same for going to the left. As you can see, you go up to the left, then down to the left, up to the left, down to the left. And it continues, same for the right, where it goes down to the right, then up to the right. And for down, it goes down to the left, then down to the right, down to the left, down to the right. It also has 2 simple step moves for repositioning slightly more efficiently, and this does allow it to change color, as currently it is color bound on black, but it can change to being color bound on white by moving onto a white space. Now we're going to talk about all those special new pieces that all, just like their old varieties, promote to Heavenly Tetrarchs. We've seen the Heavenly Tetrarch before, but we have not seen the Yakshini before. The Yakshini, as you can see, has the same moves as the Yaksha, except it moves twice. So as you can see, it has this symbol right here, which, as I showed in the movement tutorial, is actually a limited range of 3, but you can do it twice, which means any of these yellow spaces are its first move, and then any of the greenish spaces are after its second move. Of course, it can also just move back to where it began as an Eagle Eat move. So that is the Yakshini. This is the Sumo Wrestler. As you can see, it is color bound to black. It also, interestingly, cannot reach these spaces because of the way that the limited range of 3 works. Next up is the Asura. As you can see, it has a very interesting range holding. It is a very attackative, forward-moving piece, unlike the other 2, which were either balanced or more defensive. And finally, the Heavenly Protector holds very decent space, but it is a bit misleading in the space that it holds, because again, all of these spaces can still only capture twice. So the first capture is on one of these yellow spaces, and then the second capture is one of these green spaces. For example, if there was a piece here and here, it could only capture one of them by moving this way and then grabbing, or moving this way and then grabbing. They all, of course, promote to Heavenly Tetrarchs, and that can be kind of important because of the next piece we'll talk about The Chariot Soldier in this game is, I mean, right off the rip, it's almost as good of as Queen movement-wise. It's got great space holding, and because of these limit range of 2s on the sides, it actually has decent defensive capabilities for itself. It can't protect anything too well, but it definitely can keep itself from harm's way usually. The important part is that its promotion, the Heavenly Tetrarch King, has a new aspect right here. This aspect is known as semi-royal. Basically, the Heavenly Tetrarch King is considered a royal piece, which does count it as being immune to the effects of a third level cannon move when, and only when, there is a Heavenly Tetrarch on your side of the board. So if you have a promoted Asura, Heavenly Protector, Sumo Wrestler, or Yakshini, then your Heavenly Tetrarch King, which is presumably also on the board, is considered a royal piece. Now, having extra royal pieces is great, but it also has decent movement for attacking capabilities. As you can see, it has Eagerly Eat moves surrounding it entirely, which means that pieces that get too close can't immediately attack it, which means this piece is immune to attacks from things like pawns and go-betweens as long as you don't put it there. It also has jump moves or ranging moves. These are not jump to ranges, they are jumping or ranging moves, which means that it has range just like a queen and also has jumping capabilities in all directions. Overall, a decent piece with an interesting aspect. Next up, we'll be talking about the Itsumade and the Rock. Now, I explained when I was explaining the whole board setup that these are very similar to the Kirin and the Phoenix, and that is the same. The Itsumade is very much just the Kirin, but one space farther on the jumps and one space further plus the step moves, so a limited range of 2. And the Rock, in the same manner, is just like the Phoenix. What is different about them is their promotions are much stronger. As you remember, the Kirin promoted to a lion. Well, the Itsumade promotes to possibly the strongest piece in the game, definitely the strongest multi-mover in the Horned Lion. Now, as you can see, my example board is completely covered, and that's because the Horned Lion has a 5x multi-move in every direction. So this yellow space area is not the first move. This yellow space area is actually explaining everywhere it can move to and come back home as an Eagerly Eat move. So for example, if there was a piece here, here, and here, it could 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Eat all 3 of them and return to where it started. That is insane. It can eat up to 5 pieces in one turn, which is some of the most destruction you could possibly get. It has the best defense of every piece, and it is your most powerful area attacker. It is not the most powerful piece in the game, and there are plenty of counters to it, but do not allow your opponent to get a Horned Lion into your side of the board. If they bring their Horned Lion into your side of the board, you are going to lose, almost definitely. Now, you might be thinking, well, the Phoenix promoted to a queen, so what does the Rock promote to? The Charred Queen. Now, just like I was explaining earlier with that other piece and its promotion having this range, which is burning range, this piece has a lot of potential for also capturing a ton of pieces. This piece actually has more potential for capturing pieces than the Horned Lion does, but it controls less space. This burn range basically allows you to capture any piece you jump over while making a burn move. And again, you need to jump over all pieces and land on an empty space in order to do this. But when you do this, it burns every piece you jumped over. This includes friendly pieces that aren't immune to burn. The Charged Queen is also a great piece to have, but it does not have as much attacking potential as the Horned Lion. The Horned Lion has a lot more potential for taking out and checkmating your enemy, whereas the Charged Queen can be great at picking off pieces in the that are not protected very effectively, or just picking off pieces that don't have any protection against being burned. Next up, we'll be talking about those special generals that were seen earlier. As you can see, we've got the Mountain General, some simple movements. The Fire General, very simple movements also. The Water General also has simple movements, and the Wind General also has simple movements. But of course, what makes these pieces interesting is their aspects. The Mountain General has a new aspect. All of these actually have new aspects, but we'll be starting with the Mountain General, which is Rumble. Now, what a piece with Rumble does is after moving, the next enemy move has to be made with one of the pieces surrounding the piece that made a move with Rumble. So, for example, if your Mountain General was standing right here and there was a pawn right here, you could move the Mountain General here, and the next enemy move, unless there was more pieces surrounding it, would have to be made with that pawn right here. You can force your enemy to make specific moves as long as you utilize your Mountain General in very tight areas and force your enemy to make moves they don't want to make, perhaps. Such as pushing your Mountain General next to a piece that doesn't have much maneuverability but would be no longer protected if it moved, and then allowing you to capture it on the next move. The other thing you can do with your Mountain General is promote it. The Peaceful Mountain is a great piece. It's got that same Rumble aspect, but it also just has the moves of a bishop, and limit ranges of 5 are basically ranges under most conditions. 5 moves is a far distance on a board, especially given that adds up to 11 spaces of protection on the sides. Let's move on to the Fire General, which, as you can see, it's got a it's not a new aspect, but it is a strong aspect that we've seen in the past, and that's Burn, or Fire aspect. Just a strong piece that can burn all the pieces that are surrounding it. Now, getting your Fire General out is going to be difficult, because just like the Fire Demons, they can burn your own pieces if you're not careful with them. But getting it promoted would be great, because its promotion is the Hungry Flame. This is the only piece in the game that has both fire range and the burn aspect. Meaning that if you find an opening, you can burn all the pieces on your way to that opening, and then upon landing, burn all the pieces around where you landed. One of the strongest attacking pieces in the entire game is the promotion of the Fire General. It's also just got these, tacked on limit ranges of 5 that they just add to the power. Moving on to the Water General, we've got a new aspect here. This is Splash. Now, Splash is going to be your answer to fire pieces. As you can see, more and more pieces in this game are gaining the abilities to burn pieces, and that's dangerous, but Water General and pieces that have the Splash aspect are going to be your answer. The Water General basically creates an aura around it within 2 spaces, so that's this area right here. Think of it like the area that a regular lion can attack. And that area is protecting every piece in that area is protected from the burning effects of both burn range and the fire aspect. For example, if you had a piece right here and a fire demon moved right here, it would not be burned because the aura of water around this Water General protects the piece from a fire. This does indeed mean that the Water General is immune to the burn effects even if it was moved over from a flaming ranged piece. Notably, also, any piece that has the fire aspect, when the Water General moves within that 2 spaces of it, basically gets burned by water. So if there was a fire piece right here, and if there was a fire piece over here, and the Water General moved this space right here, the aura of water around it would hit the fire piece, destroying it. Which means that you have great potential for taking out fire pieces as long as you use Splash properly. Notably, the Splash aspect that will hit pieces that have the fire aspect and pieces that have burn range. Those are both considered fire pieces and would both get destroyed by this water area of effect. The promotion of the Water General is the Soothing River, which basically just takes the Rook's moves and adds on some limit range of 3 on the diagonals, making it a great piece overall, but you're probably going to want to save this for defensive measures. Because it's got Splash, it's just going to be a great piece for putting towards your front lines, and whenever a fire piece starts joining the fight, just slap that sucker in front of it or move it in an advantageous spot so that you can protect all your pieces from getting burned. Now, before we move on to the Wind General, I want to talk about the Killer Whale quick. Now, the Killer Whale we've seen before as a promotion, but its promotion is the real interesting part, which is the Ghost Whale. The Ghost Whale has a symbol that looks very similar to the splash symbol, and that's because it's very much related. This is greater splash, and it works exactly like the splash aspect, except instead of only hitting 2 spaces, it hits 3 spaces around it. So this is the area in which the Ghost Whale protects from flame pieces. Overall, a great piece to keep promoted and just keep somewhere to just protect a huge chunk of pieces from getting burned. Otherwise, its movements are a little difficult to use, but not bad. Moving swiftly back into the generals that are specially added in this version, we've got the Wind General. Now, the Wind General has an aspect that we'll see on a bunch of other pieces in this game, and it's because it is the easy promotion aspect. What the easy promotion aspect basically does is whenever a piece with easy promotion captures a piece, it promotes itself. So this means that you do not need to enter the enemy's backlines with the Wind General in order to promote it. You can just capture a piece with the Wind General and it'll automatically promote the Wind General. The promotion of the Wind General is the Eastern Wind. Now, as you can see, it's not on center, and that's because this is the only piece in the game that has a limit range of 7. I didn't even talk about the limit range of 7 in my movement tutorial, and that's because this is the only piece that has it. Basically, it's just like the limit range of 6, but you can move 7 spaces. So it's not really that complicated. It also moves like a rook, but it has a new aspect here, and that aspect is called Resurrect. Whenever a piece captures a piece with the Resurrect aspect, basically it forces the owner of the Resurrect aspect piece to use its turn to demote the piece that has that aspect, capturing the piece that captured it. Now, if that sounds complicated, it kinda is. Basically, you're using your turn to get your piece back, but it demotes in the process. This captures the piece that captured it, making it a great source for destruction on the battlefield. Let me show you an example right here. So, for example, in this scenario, with your flaming ox cart wheel, you could hop this way to capture this pawn, and in doing so, the enemy perhaps could use their howling dog to recapture your flaming ox cart wheel. But because of the resurrection aspect, the howling dog would get captured and your flaming ox cart wheel would demote into the crippled wheel. Next up, we've got a trio of pieces that are hook movers and very powerful. The Peeled Blister is a Tengu without its step moves, which means it will be locked on to the side it starts on. And as you can see, the Peeled Blister will start on dark for both sides. What makes the Peeled Blister interesting is its easy promotion. Now you might be thinking, what could possibly be stronger than a Peeled Blister? Is it going to turn into a Tengu? Well, actually, the Peeled Blister and the Wild Gun and the Yazaimon Octopus, which, by the way, a piece that can move like a queen hook moves. I mean, you can see how much destruction this could damage. All these pieces promote to the same piece, that being a gold general. They all promote to a gold general. So basically what this gives you is 3 pieces that are all starting right next to the front of the board, but you only get to capture 1 piece with them. And after they capture a piece, they're getting turned into a gold general and being almost useless. So use these pieces very strategically to snipe out a piece that's been dealing either structural damage to you or holding you from getting an attack in. And just snipe it out of existence and force them to either have to deal with a gold general somewhere in their defenses, or just tell them, I mean, I got a gold general there now. You could use that for defense of a different piece, or just make them capture it, wasting a move in order for you to move in more effectively. Now for another piece that adds to the reason why this trial is called the Trial of Promotions. This aspect is only ever found on the crippled wheel, and that aspect is called Improve. Basically, you can, instead of moving any of your pieces, use the improve aspect to promote the crippled wheel. You can see the Flaming Ox Cart wheel has some great movement on the diagonals with simple bishop moves, and then also has these continuing jump moves on the sides and horse-like continuing jump moves in front and behind it. This makes it very good at maneuvering itself. And just like the Eastern Wind, it has the resurrect aspect, meaning that it's going to be kind of difficult to kill this piece because upon capturing it once, it'll demote, and then the next turn that your enemy gets, they can re-promote it without having to do anything other than just decide that it wants to be promoted now. This piece will be very strong, but if you can get it in a trap somehow to force it to capture a piece that would otherwise cause your opponent to lose some other material advantage, it can go very bad for your opponent very quickly as long as you play it right. Spirit Fruit's movements, it's the same as a reverse chariot. It's just not that good. But the aspect just takes this piece from being a simple piece to an amazing piece. This aspect is only ever found on the Spirit Fruit, and it is called filling. Basically, this aspect allows any piece on your side of the board to capture your own piece. So, for example, if I had a pawn right here, the pawn could capture the Spirit Fruit by moving on top of it. What this does is it causes the piece that captured the Spirit Fruit to become promoted. So basically this allows you to get one free promotion off whenever you want by capturing your own piece. This can be huge, especially if you're able to get like your Itsumade or Rock over there to capture it. Getting out a Horned Lion or a Charred Queen is a great advantage. Notably, although, your Spirit Fruit starts here, and it's going to be a little difficult to get things like your Itsumade or your Rock over there. And finally, the reason basically that this game is called Trial of Promotions is because of this piece right here, the Vanguard. The Vanguard has the Inspire aspect, meaning it is immune to the effects of the Emperor's attack and immune to the effects of a third level cannon move. But the Inspire aspect does so much more than that. Basically, every piece within this area of the Vanguard is considered promoted until the Vanguard moves. So any of your friendly pieces in this area will stay promoted until they move away from the Vanguard or the Vanguard moves away from them. This can cause you to very easily push with some of your weaker units that have decent promotions by simply having the Vanguard next to them, moving them with their strong movements as being promoted to an advantageous spot, and then they demote to what they were before. Or for example, if you've got a piece that has burn range on it, if you can get your Vanguard next to your Vermilion Sparrow, perhaps by moving it right here, by moving your Eastern Barbarian out of the way and moving it here, the Vermilion Sparrow will have that promotion with its burning range. You can move it with that burn range, killing pieces on your enemy's side of the board. It then demotes, and you don't really need to worry about you don't really need to worry about trying to save it because it already demoted anyway. You got the use you wanted out of it, and it's in enemy territory, so you can promote it if you really want to. It's probably going to just die immediately, but you got what you needed out of it. And that's the important thing about the Vanguard. Basically, every piece around the Vanguard can be used to their full potential at least once. It's very similar to the Yazaimon Octopus, the Wild Gun, and the Peeled Blister in usage, where you want to use these to take your weaker, more unuseful pieces and get one good use out of them before they return to their weakened state. Basically, the Vanguard is going to be your most important piece in this game, and if you lose the Vanguard in an exchange where you don't gain some other advantage, you've probably lost the game already. Keep your Vanguard safe, and don't have to worry about the Emperor capturing it, and you don't need to worry about a Tier 3 cannon capturing it in the final game, as it will be in the final game as well, and there are Tier 3 cannons in the final game. But now I'm going to wrap things up with some final thoughts on this entire game so far. This game is much bigger than the previous ones. It is a 25 by 25 board. there is strategy to it, but trying to define what the best strategy is almost impossible. I mean, I'll give you some examples of things you can do really well off the rip. For example, the Asura can use its limit range to jump over friendly pieces, but its first limit range can get up to here, and then its second limit range can only go to here because it has to stop. It's really hard to clear this area, but the sooner you can clear it and get your Itsumade to eat your spirit fruit to get a horned lion on the board, the better. It's almost guaranteed that the piece you want to use your spirit fruit to promote is going to be the Itsumade or the rock. The Itsumade is just easier to get there. Another great target for that would be like the Great Dragon, because the Great Dragon has a great promotion as well. And if you'd rather try to move your spirit fruit up and then have one of your pieces up here capture it, that also works. It's just a lot easier for the Itsumade to get promoted because it has less movement. Using your Vanguard to perhaps, for example, if you can clear space and make room in these areas, you can move your Vanguard, for example, to here or over here and get all of these weaker moving pieces into a stronger state so that they can get out into the middle of the field. Because once they're in the middle of the field, their weaker moves are fine because you can use them to defend other pieces that have stronger moves and just lock the position in place. And that's the basic strategy you're going to want to use through this game is, for example, move this pawn one space forward and Vanguard over this way, and then use those gold general token moves of your pawns to get them into the field even more effectively. Then after that, you can move back this way and promote other pieces that can move into the fray. Basically, the Vanguard is your engine for getting pieces that are weaker into the fray quickly. And you're going to want to use that as much as possible to keep moving forward with all of your pieces. Now, this game is a lot slower than some of the other ones, especially the last one, which had that drum and banner, which really just sped up all of the movement of your pieces. This speeds up your pieces, but in a very different manner. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, strategies that I would definitely employ is trying to get your Fire General promoted. You could, for example, use your Fire General with the Spirit Fruit to promote it, but if you promote your Fire General on move 1, it will kill your king by burning him. So I wouldn't do that. Instead, I would try to make some space over here, for example, moving your king and emperor out of the way, and then promoting your Fire General. You can burn your vertical puppet, it's not the biggest deal. And then now that you have your Hungry Fire, you've got one of the best attacking pieces in the game. The other thing that is definitely recommended, that if you can pull it off, would go really, really effectively, is moving your Vanguard down next to your Blind Bear to give yourself an extra Emperor. This will be a one-time Emperor use, but one-time Emperor uses are great, you know? Go ahead and snipe the enemy Fire General, or snipe the enemy Spirit Fruit, because that is another grand move. Another thing you can do on move 1 is simply trade your Emperor for the enemy Spirit Fruit, which would most likely result in them using their Emperor to target your Spirit Fruit, just because having the enemy capture your Spirit Fruit usually is not something that they're going to be very happy about. It is a bit of a lame move, but it definitely could help if you're worried that your enemy has some sort of Spirit Fruit-based strategy that they're going for. Anyway, this game is definitely the most complicated of all of them so far. We've got one more game to go, and I hope you all will stay tuned for the final trial, Challenge 8. I'm sorry that this video took so long to get out. I hope to get the next one out soon, but again, it's going to be shown in the same manner that this one was shown in because it's very complicated. But I thank you all for watching, and if you liked the video, please like the video and subscribe if you want to watch the next one that comes out soon. So thank you all for watching, and goodbye. Blah.